Hello, and welcome back to Football on the 40. I'm your host, Bowen, joined as always by Andrew and Kevin. This show is produced by the esteemed Hamilton Lizer. Well, folks, our Horns did it. We escaped Nashville with a narrow victory against Vanderbilt and are now 7-1. We go into this week with another very well-timed bye. So no game to look forward to this weekend, but we wanted to recap the Vandy game as well as give a State of the Union mid-season recap on the program so far, how the year's going, how we're progressing to our goals, and what we have to look forward to. So we'll get into all that and more. And before we get into it, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know how you're feeling about the Horns so far on a scale 1 to 10. How nervous are y'all about some of our goals the rest of the season? And yeah, just how you're feeling about how the season's going. So as we get into it, we'll recap the Vanderbilt game, and yeah, we'll see what Andy and Kev had to say about the game this past weekend. So Andy, we'll start with you first. Where were you watching the game? What were your takeaways from the performance this past weekend?
Yeah, just in Houston this week. Yeah, overall, I think the score only winning by three kind of shifted the perspective of a lot of fans when I feel like Texas was in control a lot of the time. I do think Quinn, I wouldn't say he played a great game, but I didn't think he played a bad game by any means. I was pleased with what he did. And it was interesting because a lot of people are frustrated, and at times I get frustrated too, of kind of the short passes. It seems like we haven't been going deep at all. Um, and I think a PFF came out like today saying Quinn is like 79 out of 79 power four quarterbacks in average depth of target on the season at like less than 6 yards, which is not a lot. But Sark kind of talked about in his press conference today how a lot of teams are just essentially the coverage that they're playing with their safeties are eliminating the deep pass for Texas. So essentially, Texas has to resort to the short passes, and that's kind of been the case all season. Um, so that's kind of been more of the reason than not, according to Sark. But um, regardless, I do think Quinn had a bounce back game this past week, even though if it wasn't like an elite game. But overall, I was pleased. The interceptions were fluky, in my opinion, but I am happy with the game, with the process of the game. The result wasn't there, even though we won, but I was happy with the process. What about y'all?
I agreed with all that. I think with it being the bye week, you kind of look at the bigger picture, right? And it just seems like to the average fan, like the team's not improving. Um, it's not like we played terrible against Vanderbilt, but when the score is that close, like you say, you start to ask a lot of questions. And um, you know, Quinn looks a little bit hesitant after the injury, maybe not stepping into throws as much. I know the interception he threw early wasn't necessarily his fault. It was a batted ball, but I think that was the third game in a row where he started the game with an interception. So hard to see that, hard to see the second interception. A little frustrating to see our offensive line that started the year so good give up four more sacks. And then in the second half, like I don't think anybody's heart rate was super high during halftime, or we were really concerned at that stage, but not to score a touchdown in the second half is not great. Like, I don't think anybody would say that was like the quality of a number five or number six team in the country against Vanderbilt, although they are a better team this year. So there's a lot to be frustrated about. I'm hopeful that the team will improve, but if we don't like ever get over this hump, like it will be a little bit of a letdown not having the great season that we were prepared for there for a little while when we were number one. What do you think,
Yeah.
Bo?
Yeah, I think y'all captured it well. Yeah, a huge opportunity this weekend for like a letdown game, and I feel like we did bounce back pretty well. There was a pretty spirited discussion in the group chat after the game and during the first parts of the game on, potential fraudulent behavior by the Horns, and then afterwards too. And then when the AP poll came out and we dropped to 6, I think we were had a bunch of discussion as well. And then I think one of the things that our buddy Evan pointed out was just, of course, like it's not a very novel takeaway, but just how elite our defense is and how well defenses travel. I saw a tweet from CJ Vogel underscore OTF, who I really like. I think, all Texas fans are pretty familiar with his tweets and his research. But I really like this one. He mentioned distances traveled on the last 10 scoring drives for Texas opponents. So I'll just rattle off some of the numbers here: 31 touchdown, 29 field goal, 38 touchdown, and then like 13 touchdown, 13 field goal, 34 touchdown, 25 field goal. Essentially, the average distance was 38.5 yards needed that our opponents have needed to do to put points on the board. That's a mixture of touchdowns and field goals. So only twice in all of those did opponents need to extend the drive more than 40 yards. So I think once we get some of the fluky stuff out of the way, like Andy, you were mentioning, as well as like honestly, like the punting game hasn't been really top notch. Definitely miss Dixon, but once we get those together, I think like the defense is elite and they're playing their tails off, and it's not really reflected in this in the box score, but yeah, I'm pretty encouraged, of course, by the performance of our defense. I think that's a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, our defense has been elite all year. That's something we can rely on. And it's nice. It's really hard to win if you don't have an elite defense. So, like, that's a really big positive going forward to the last 4 games of the regular season. However, we got to improve offensively. It's just interesting, kind of what I was talking about earlier with teams kind of eliminating the deep pass option for Texas. Um, it and this kind of showed its ugly head in the second half, but like Texas essentially has to sustain 8, 9, 10 play drives to score touchdowns now because they can't get these big chunk yards. And Vandy did a really good job about that this week. And as a result, in the second half, whenever we had a 10-yard penalty, a holding, or like a boneheaded mistake, that essentially would kill a drive, and those can happen more often if you have to run more plays. So um, I think it'll be interesting to see, and I think it will be something we'll see continuing throughout the rest of the season. Teams just not allowing us to have the deep ball, and we can't really punish them with our run game right now. So I mean, that's something that needs to improve if we want to have a better outlook on the season.
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
two points on
definitely.
that is like Georgia showed everybody that's how you defend against Texas. So Vanderbilt having that level of success effectively doing the same thing is a little bit of a red flag. Like the template's out there on how to defend us. And the second thing is in past years, we've had Jatavian Sanders that's really comfortable running that like up the middle seam route that can be you can still get like chunk plays when there's safeties if you have somebody like a tight end that can go up the middle and catch a smallish vertical ball. I don't think Gunnar Helm can do that like JT Sanders could. And it limits us
Yeah,
to
he likes
this
the
like
boundaries.
yes, it limits us to this offense that's always going towards the sideline. And like you said, we have to string together like a 6 minute drive to score. So there's got to be something more. Like I don't know. We got four games left. We'll see.
Yep. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, Andy. Lead us into a quick college football playoff discussion. What should the listeners know and the viewers know about what the landscape's looking like right now?
Yeah. So kind of on the this season, there's been a lot of change. There's going to be a 12-team playoff. We've never had this before. So there's a lot of dialogue that needs to happen between now and the rest of the regular season. There's a lot of different paths that can happen for Texas individually as a team, and then all other teams that are in contention right now. Um, and it's just interesting. I did some research on this, and I thought it was pretty interesting how many teams have a potential to make the playoff right now. Now, this does not include group of 5 teams, so if you include that, that's probably adding about, I don't know, 5 to 6 more teams. But so take away the group of 5 schools. For the remaining 11 spots in the playoff right now, there's about 19 schools that have a real chance of making the playoff. In the Big Ten, there's four. SEC, there's seven. ACC, there's four. Big 12, there's four. And then you got to include Notre Dame. So there's 19 teams for 11 spots. And this weekend, oh wait, no, Alabama and LSU play the following weekend. But there's going to be some elimination games coming up, which is going to be really exciting. Alabama, LSU, that I mentioned, that will be an elimination game. Whoever loses that game will not make the college football playoff. There will be other elimination games throughout the rest of the way as well. But yeah, in the SEC, there's still 7 teams that can make the college football playoff. A&M, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, LSU all have a realistic chance to go to Atlanta right now. Alabama and Ole Miss. Ole Miss probably, if I had to predict, is the least likely out of the 7 to make it, but they still technically have a shot, even if, especially if they beat Georgia at home in a couple weeks. But yeah, the SEC has by far the most teams that have a potential chance to make the playoff. But the good news about it only being 19 teams for 11 spots kind of shows that there are going to be some teams with 2 losses that make the playoff. Now, we can get into a discussion about like strength of record for Texas and who we've played so far this year. And I mean, that's probably not worth having until the end of the year and seeing who we've beaten. But there is a chance, Texas fans, if you are listening, that Texas still makes the playoff, even if they lose one more game down the stretch. Hopefully that doesn't happen. If we win out, we are most likely guaranteed a berth into the college football playoff. I'd be shocked if we didn't make the college football playoff. Hopefully we don't lose. We got some real tough ones down the stretch, but I don't know. Out of the teams that are able to potentially make the playoff, just kind of the breakdown of the conferences, anything that caught y'all's eye with a potential CFP outlook?
Bowen, you take that first.
I think how crowded the SEC is definitely stressful. Like how
Yeah.
crowded at the top. Like there's just so many names. And I feel like us going into the season, for the most part, I think we weren't really expecting anything out of this Thanksgiving game with A&M, but it's really looking like it's going to come down to that, which is I don't fear A&M by any means, but like really be nice if that game was like a catwalk and like, a cakewalk, sorry, and just like, we can have our eyes on the postseason, but that game's going to be hype. That's kind of where I have my eyes on. Not that these, upcoming games against Arkansas and Kentucky and Florida will be any slouch either, but still yeah, I think that's where my eyes immediately go to. Kev, what about you?
And like a broad picture, I think it's really entertaining and it's great as a viewer because like you saw ESPN kind of teeing up this point of view even in our game. They showed this graphic like 4 times, like Texas with a win percentage to get in was like over 80%. Texas with a loss percentage was like 35 or 40 or something. We're going to be seeing that graphic in like every single meaningful game, no matter the time slot for the rest of the season, which is really fun, not just for our fan base, but just for everybody, so that you feel like you're playing consequential games in late October, early November. That's really exciting. Like that's so cool. And another neat thing is just like with a wider field, you've got teams like Indiana right now that are undefeated, kind of coming from nowhere. Teams like Pittsburgh that also have like a legitimate chance. Colorado still being, in the picture. Like there's a lot of mid-tier schools that are also playing consequential games and like living in the era, quote unquote, of NIL and like um unfair recruiting advantages and everything. Like broadening the playoff really brings everybody in and keeps everybody's attention at this time of the year, which is really cool. I'm grateful for it. But like I'm going to end on the same thing you did, Bowen. I think the frustration in our group text, my frustration at the beginning of the Vanderbilt game, and our anxiety right now is mostly us worried about that game.
Yeah.
And our frustration came before watching what A&M did to LSU, but it's worsened since then because, like you said, that game is not going to be easy. And whether we want to admit it or not, we're already concerned about it and primarily thinking about do we get there with one win and how do we fare in such a tough environment with a running quarterback like um
Marcel Reed for
yeah, that
A&M.
that
Yeah.
that one's gonna be it's gonna be really tough. I think it might be the game of the season or like definitely top five games of the season. And my worry is definitely increasing for that one too. So I could sit here and say like, oh, I'm worried about the program. Don't know if Sark's the guy. Like really, if I like boil it down, it's like I'm worried about that one game.
But like, what a game for that, for like the rivalry to come back to, though. Just like broad. Like
Yeah.
a lot of these games growing up, for the most part, Texas really dominated like A&M from like 2000 to 2011,
Hmm.
and the usually like it was very cyclical where either A&M or Texas was dominant, but both teams are going to be hopefully like in the top 10, at least for Texas. I can't say for A&M, but I mean, I think A&M will probably be in the top 10 too. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be an exciting game. What an awesome game to come back to. I really wish it was at DKR, but A&M got their way. They got their feelings hurt that Texas joined the SEC. So it is what it is. Oh, well, any other thoughts y'all have? Okay.
Not really, no. Just gratitude that we got a big playoff and lots of teams involved.
Yeah. Agreed.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, okay, let's kind of transition, kind of diving deeper into the Texas program. I think is a good point of the season, kind of taking a state of the union. This section of the pod will it'll be more unstructured. We'll just kind of ask different questions. Not really, not a lot of structure to it, like I said. So, Kevin, Bo, take it away. Ask a question, kind of share your thoughts, however you want to go with it. Take it away.
I would say recruiting. Like, how do we feel like our 2, 3, 4 year outlook is based on what Sark has done in the last few years and what our recruiting hopes look like?
Bo, do you want to take it or you want me to take it?
No, I think you're our resident recruiting expert, so please go ahead.
I mean, with Sark, it's been impressive with our recruiting classes. I think we've been like around number 5 the last couple of years, right? Um, it depends on what recruiting service you're going to, but we have really hit on a high number of recruits throughout the past couple of years. It's exciting to see this recruiting class and seeing the potential. Now, there's a lot of commits, or we have a decent amount of commits and potentially more commits to come. Um, so that'll be interesting to see. An interesting rule that's not officially passed, and Sark talked about this in a press conference today, is scholarships are going to go from most likely going to go from 85 to 105. And someone asked, are you going to take advantage of that this year? Sark said he didn't want to do it until that's officially set in stone because he didn't want to tell players no they couldn't come if the rule didn't pass. But um, it will be interesting to see because schools like Texas, in theory, should be able to get a higher percentage of top-notch recruits. However, in this era of the transfer portal and the NIL, that might be a short-term thing where freshmen are coming in really talented, but might be transferring out even at a higher rate. So we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. But yeah, overall, I'm excited with our recruiting. I think Sark has proven that he's been able to develop players, and we'll see where it goes. But I think Sark is leading Texas in the right way in a lot
Hmm.
of facets, but especially recruiting.
All right, I got a question. I got a
Yeah.
question for both of you guys. Going into the bye week, what are the top 3 things that Sark is telling the team that we need to improve for the rest of the season? What are the top three? Could be could be position groups, or like what do you think are his like top three focus areas are? If you don't have three, you can just give me one or the top two. I'm curious like what you think that, with these 2 weeks that we have of course, like resting up for, guys like Isaiah. And I actually don't know if um what was the corner that we lost?
I mean,
Maku
Cuba,
Makuba, yeah, if he'll be
he'll be back.
if he'll be back, yeah, like resting up those guys. Yeah, give me the focus areas for that Sark is telling the team going into the bye. Whoever's ready first,
And
can go ahead.
maybe we can get three combined, Andrew. I think one thing that I would pick on is the pass rush. Like early in the season, we saw a lot of fresh players in there because we were rotating a lot and a lot of success. Surely you could say that's because the quality of team we're playing against was less, but the last couple games, especially Vanderbilt for sure, like we didn't sack Pavia. Um, I just want to see more out of them. Like we talked about how our defense is good, our defense is elite. I would say that our secondary is elite, but our pass rush and run defense might not quite be. So I would be looking at some improvement there.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see because the next couple weeks we play mobile quarterbacks like we did against Vanderbilt. So it might be tough. Really, Kentucky is the only team the rest of the way that who does not have a mobile quarterback. So I agree. I think it would be great if we can get more pressure on the quarterback, especially sacks. Sacks are not the end all be all, but obviously they're effective. Pavia, the way that he was able to escape the pocket really impressed me. So
Yeah.
I gotta give kudos to him too. But I definitely agree with that. Um, yeah, I'm gonna kind of go off the radar here. Bowen kind of touched on this a little bit. The punt game was not great. Kern came back off an injury this week, so maybe that had to play that played a role this week. I don't know, but I definitely think we need to improve our punt game going forward. I feel like it really wasn't a huge issue at the beginning of the year, but the last couple of games it just hasn't looked very good. So yeah, if we can kind of bounce back in that regard, special teams as a whole, I think that'd be huge. So I think Matthew Golden is going to return a touchdown at some point before the end of the year. That's my
Yeah, the
prediction.
return game has been solid. He's been able to weave. But the punting discrepancy has been like super apparent these past 2 weeks. I mean, like Georgia, we were in person, or Kevin and I were in person, and you could see the stark difference just even in hang time. Like the Georgia punter, who I think is an NFL prospect, I think, but he was just launching them. And ours were just, they looked like puny punts. I was like, what is going on? What is going on? So I like those. Those are some good focus areas for sure.
Yeah.
We need one
Do you
more
have one,
though.
Bo?
Yeah.
One more. I feel like we need an answer for teams coming out and playing this like cover two shell. Like if it's not the run game, it's got to be something more creative. Like Sark is so creative. Like we can certainly like take what the defense gives you, and that's what Sark said a lot like this press conference. But if teams know that that's like what we're going to go to, like we need to do like the next step, right? We need to continue to evolve, continue to iterate because I don't think we're going to win the national championship if they come out and cover two shell and our answers are screened and then the screens get shut down and we don't have any other answers. Like, I don't know what the answer is, especially with, like you said, Kev, with the personnel grouping that we have. Like Gunnar Helm, like you said, likes to play the boundaries, and I've been pretty disappointed in Amari Niblack. Like he did not look good this past week. He had like a couple penalties like pretty early on in the game, right? And I think dropped one or two passes, which is double bummer for me because I drafted him on my dynasty team.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, so I think like the answer to this Mel Kiper's favorite, you know, uh cover two shell, that we need to figure out a response to. I
Yeah.
think that that's the big thing.
And one more thing on that reminds me of, remember when Sark was on game day wearing like the black on black suit, everybody's wearing a Texas Cowboys hat, sick. And Saban was like asking him about schematic questions against different defensive situations. And I don't know if you guys watched this or remembered it, but in that conversation, Sark basically said, we're not an offense that likes to run a lot of new plays when we come up against
Yeah,
different
I
teams
remember
on a
that.
weekly basis. He basically said what we're changing is the tricks that we do pre-snap with motion and the way that we use our motion advantage to see what the defense is doing. And he's basically saying there like we actually don't change anything week to week. We're running the same plays we have been all season. We just put eye candy on it. And when you're faced with a challenge of like, hey, this one particular defense is crushing you, like, does he really have the willingness to bring some new plays in? Because if that's his like, theory that he's not going to do that, he's not going to confuse the offense. He's just going to add motions that may or may not do anything. Like, how much hope should that give us that he will resolve that problem? I don't know.
Yeah, it's good points for sure. Yeah, I like those. I like those a lot. We'll see. We'll see if he goes into that.
I've got one more like program as a whole. I think one of Sark's strong suits and one of the reasons why we've had good success is the continuity that we've had on the coaching staff. Um, Hardly any assistant coaches like getting fired. Some have left for other jobs, other bigger jobs, but like based on what we're seeing now, who would you say you know, the position coach or, offensive or defensive coach, maybe special teams is at the most risk of getting let go at the end of the season? Or do you think we'll see any turnover at the end of the season?
That's a
That's a
good
good
question.
question.
I, I feel like there's more of a chance someone gets hired away than someone getting fired.
Yeah, I
I don't
probably
think
would agree.
there's just like a glaring weakness of a coach. Um, Offensive line, they haven't been, you know, they haven't lived up to expectations this year. But I don't think I would want a different coach right now than Kyle Flood. Like I think he's proven himself throughout the years at Texas. Yeah, I think honestly, I think the coaching tree is going to stay the same in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of went down that same thought process. My mind went to Coach Flood too, and I was like, Bowen, are you crazy? Like this is like Kyle Flood. Like he's people come to Texas because he's here, right? Like we have big guys up front. So I feel like we can't lose him. And I don't think anyone on the defense. So I would probably agree that it would be more of a um, headhunt, getting poached situation versus
Yeah.
performance based.
One question, or Cav, do you want to say something about the coaches or?
No, I'm just glad that I stumped you guys a little bit.
Okay. A question that I have is, any player from last year's team that you could pluck for this year's team, who would you get?
Meaning like
Assuming fully healthy.
who do we like take out of the NFL and bring back on this team?
Yeah, essentially.
Well, that's a good one. I'd man, I don't want to say this because it's too easy, but Xavier Worthy. Um, because we hear about like we got a lot of team speed, a lot of great wide receivers, but that shell defense that we're talking about, like we don't have anybody that can beat that or get behind people. Like we only have receivers that seem to be able to get behind teams if they're playing against man defense. So getting that speed back would be nice, but there's a lot of players that could help, I think.
Yeah, I think Worthy's a good call. I mean, we already talked about JT Sanders. I think both of the guys that went to Carolina would be good, like JT Sanders or Jonathan Brooks. I'm assuming a healthy Jonathan Brooks, like just watching him like shred through um, you know, defenses last year was pretty incredible. So being able to see that again, that would be pretty sick. But yeah, I think, any of those offensive options would be very, very much welcome. Andy, what about you? What's your answer
Yeah.
there?
Man, Brooks probably would have been my answer if you didn't say it. And either Sweat or Murphy. I think being able to stop the run, like we did last year, It's interesting because our secondary wasn't as good last year, but we were able to stop the run, which allowed us to have a pretty good defense. And it's kind of flipped a little bit. I wouldn't say our defensive line's bad by any means, but having someone like a Byron Murphy who could stop the run, get after the quarterback from the D tackle position, would even strengthen that position group even more. So yeah, I'm going to go with Murphy. Give me Byron Murphy. So.
I
Nice.
got one more question for us. So, we got 4 games left. We've talked about being concerned about A&M, but of the three, those being Florida, Arkansas on the road, and Kentucky, which of those three are you guys most concerned about?
Bo, you should go first.
Um, I don't know. Probably Arkansas. I don't know much about their team this season, but just going to Fayetteville and like I don't know if we've like fully exercised the demons from, our last trip up there. Uh, at least the game time has been announced, right? It's not a night game. It's
Yeah,
an
it's 11
afternoon game.
o'clock.
Oh, it's a morning game. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
excellent. That bodes super well for us. I think a night game in that environment again would be pretty stressful, but yeah, I'm
yeah,
pretty, we've been playing pretty well at home. I mean, obviously we lost to Georgia, but um yeah, I feel like I've really liked how we've looked at home. Especially just, on the offensive side, just getting into better rhythm. So
And
I feel like
Arkansas,
Arkansas was for me.
they have lost twice at home this season to A&M and LSU, both ranked matchups. So, um, also thankful it's not a night game, and they've lost at home a little bit, which is good.
yeah. Uh, man, yeah, it's tough. I think we'll talk about it more next week. I think Florida is playing really well. I think they will give Georgia some trouble this weekend. I don't know if that will result in a victory for Florida, but I think that game will be a little bit closer than what Las Vegas is saying.
Hmm.
Um, the tricky thing is if Florida really gets up for this emotional game against Georgia, then it might be a letdown against Texas, just naturally, just kind of how things go in life. However, their team, I think their team is playing pretty well at the moment. So just for the sake of being different, give me Florida. Their quarterback's mobile. He has a great arm. He's young and inexperienced, but I think he has a bright future. So yeah, give me Florida.
They're I don't envy Florida's schedule. Like you're saying, their matchup versus Georgia is gonna be a great barometer, but like playing on the road against Tennessee, playing on the road against us, is Georgia for them? Is that in Gainesville?
Jacksonville. So it's
Okay,
a
so
neutral site
it's a
game.
neutral
Yeah,
site game. But
yeah,
man, that's a tough
Yeah,
schedule.
what is that game called? There's a name for it, right?
yeah. It's the largest cocktail party.
Oh yeah, that's a fun name.
Yeah,
Nice. Cool.
but yeah. They had to play LSU. They had to play LSU, Ole Miss down the stretch too. So it's not an easy slate for them.
Yeah, they got a tough draw. All right. Well, I think that those are a good series of questions. Listeners, if y'all have any other questions on, what to expect from the rest of the season, definitely let us know and we'll try to cover them in next week's mailbag. But with that, Andy, why don't you take us into weekly trivia?
Yeah, let's do it, guys. Um, yeah, so Kevin came back last week. He tied it all up. So it's 10-10, which I think is great going into the last third of the season. So anything can happen with the Texas football team. Anything can happen with weekly trivia. I'm excited to see what happens. Guys, are y'all ready?
As I'll ever be.
Sounds good. Okay. So uh, the Longhorns are going into November with one loss. Um, how many times since 2000 has Texas had one loss or less heading into November since, or I said, already said since 2000?
Who goes first?
Kevin, you can go first this time. Bowen, you go second.
I'm gonna go 4.
Four. Okay.
I was in between 5 or 6, so I'll just go 6.
Bowen's closer. It is eight.
Oh,
So,
Wow.
nice.
yeah. So good for Bowen. He gets back on the board. Okay. This next one I'm actually pretty excited about. And just kind of a weird thing with football, just our relationship with football in the US and politics. Um, yeah, so this is kind of just like a weird trend that's happened throughout the years, and kind of wanted to share this with y'all. So, from 1936 to 2000, the outcome of the Washington Redskins slash Commanders game of their last home game, so that the outcome of their last home game decided or accurately predicted the election, if that makes sense. So if they won, if they lost, it actually predicted who was going to win the presidency. Based on their Hail Mary this past week against the Chicago Bears, which leader is now predicted to win if this trend continues? So Bowen, you go first. Kevin, you go second.
In the presidential race, right?
Yeah, just the presidential race.
So this is the whatever Washington team. This is the last home game before the election. Whatever result was resulted in that party winning.
Yeah, and the Washington won this past week. So and they don't play at home. They don't play at home this upcoming week. So this was the last home game for the Washington. So
This is truly a coin flip.
yeah, you have one of two options here. So Bowen, you go ahead.
Give me Jill Stein. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Give me Iguodala. No, I'll take Kamala. I'll take Kamala.
Yeah, that's who I had too. I was thinking that um, when the Bears were good in like the 80s, if I remember correctly, I think more Republicans were winning in that era. And then since the Bears have been bad, I think more Democrats have won in that era. So I don't know. That's just my thinking.
It's Washington though,
Well, this
not
is about
Chicago.
Washington.
But
I thought you were saying the like Washington versus the Bears.
Yeah, but it's
Matt,
the result
Washington
of
versus the
Washington
Bears was this
playing.
weekend.
Oh, so you're saying just their last home game. Anyways, it's a coin
Yeah.
flip. I'll stick with the Democrats.
Okay. Both of y'all got that question correct. It is Kamala. So the trend is,
Wow.
which is just wild. Like, it's really wild to me that like this actually was a trend for what 60 plus years. Um, so the trend is if Washington wins their last home game before the election, the incumbent party remains in office. So Democrats obviously are in office right now, so that would predict Kamala to, um, you know, I guess remain in office, even though she's not the current acting president of the United States. However, since 2000, this trend has only been accurate 2 out of 5 times. So it
Mm,
has not been accurate the
so
last
it's correcting.
25 plus years.
It's correcting.
So
Well, Robinhood just announced um a predictions market today. So you could put money on it on
Really?
Kamala or Trump. Yeah, yeah, they announced it like we've done it with like Predict It, like Jake and I. But they have that now.
That's
So
interesting. Are they the first like actual investment and betting platform then? Anyways,
yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, none of the other major stock trading platforms have it.
huh.
They've all been like pure play, but so I think they're the first one to have both. So they're gonna do it all. They're gonna do it all.
yeah,
No, those are great questions. Is there two questions this week,
yeah.
Andy?
So it's
Or
just two questions. Let's just say Bo got two questions right. Kev got one question right. Bo also wins the week, so he gets another bonus.
let's go.
So score now is 13-11 going into November. So
That's huge.
good job, guys, and we'll see how the rest of the season goes. So Bo,
Nice.
take
Thanks,
us into
Andy.
betting corner.
For sure. Okay, so this past week, again, it's kind of the same story. I'm kind of sound like a broken record. I feel like the broken record's starting to sound broken. But Andy and Kev both did pretty well this week, slightly positive. Kev 1.3 units up, Andy 1.7. I had 4.5 units in the hole. Betting 5 units on a Texas cover was very ill advised. alas, here we are. That brings Kevin's total up on the season to over 7 units, so very respectable performance. Andy has gotten better. He's a little over 1.5 units down, and I'm in the 30 range. So it's just a quickly getting from worse to even worse. So I got to figure something else out, and I think it's time for me to employ the Andy strategy of going against my gut. So the inverse bow strategy will be live, but it will not be live this week because I'm taking a sabbatical from betting this week. I'm taking the bye week again. I will not be getting worse,
That
but I will also not be getting better.
well,
So
that means that your gut is telling you not to bet this week. So
Yeah,
you need to
exactly. So
bet
you
this
should
week.
bet.
dang, already starting off on the wrong foot. That is a good point. That is a good point. The model's
I
broken.
I have a question for you as someone who has lost a lot of money on betting corner before. Is anyone in your family reaching out to you with concern? Because that definitely happened to me.
Not yet, not yet. But I think my parents, I don't think they followed the units super closely. And then my brother, Michael just knows that I'm just not doing well. So he's just like, that's just, you know, a thing. Michael works at, for the listeners, my brother, he works at Prize Picks, which is one of you've probably seen ads for it now. So he's kind of surrounded by like sports betting and props picks. So I've been inundating with a lot of my Prize Picks selections over the course of the past few months as well. But anyway, we gotta just improve. But that will not be this week. A lot of games, none Texas on the Texas side, of course. So we won't need any Texas bets to crowd the investments this week. But Andy, why don't we start with you first? What bets are you liking elsewhere around college football?
Yeah, so a lot of this is truly kind of a going against my gut type of week. I really there's a couple of these picks that it kind of makes me feel a little sick. So hopefully they come true. I'll so I'll just kind of run through my four real quick. Michigan State plays Indiana at home. Michigan State has not been very good this year. They've been pretty average. Indiana has been on a roll. I don't think they've lost, or every game they've won has been by more than 14 plus. The spread's only 7, so you would think Indiana would cover. Give me the Spartans. They're going to cover somehow. So yeah, give me the Spartans there. A&M's on a roll too. Um, Going to South Carolina is tough, but I think A&M's a better team than South Carolina. Doesn't matter. Give me the Gamecocks. They're going to pull out a victory over the Fine Aggies. They play at night, so maybe they'll help me. Who knows? But yeah, then two more. Give me 2 units on Penn State covering over Ohio State. Penn State never wins these games, so somehow they're going to win this one. And then lastly, this one makes me really sick. But Florida, like I mentioned, has been on a roll. I think if any team can beat Georgia down the stretch, I think it's actually Florida. Give me 1 unit on the money line for Florida.
Wow,
Wow.
So I do
that's
not expect this one to happen by any means. But if one team's going to do it, it's going to be Florida, in my opinion. It's not necessarily the quality of team; it's more the how Florida plays offensively. I think a mobile quarterback can give Georgia some issues just based on how they play defensively.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it for me.
My strategy is going to be root for the home team this weekend. So I'm going to pick 3 home team upsets that I might regret this time next week, but let's just go for it. I also like Penn State at home. I'm going to take 2 units Penn State money line over Ohio State early game. Can't wait to watch that one. Similarly, I like Arkansas against Ole Miss playing at home in Fayetteville. Give me 2 units on Arkansas money line over the Fighting Lane Kiffins. And then I don't disagree with your bet on South Carolina, Andrew. Um, this one's a little bit against my gut too, but after seeing South Carolina beat down Oklahoma, like, you know, ignoring their record, I think they could do it. So give me another 2 units on South Carolina over A&M. That's it for me this
wow.
week.
There you go.
Dang, y'all are predicting quite the weekend. Quite the weekend before election day. Um, I would love, it would be really interesting if what y'all predicted or what y'all are betting on came to fruition. That would be group chat would be very, very lively. So yeah, here's hoping. Here's hoping that turns out. All right, fellas. Well, I'll get those bets in. And yeah, we'll see how this weekend goes. It will be nice to not have to stress or worry about a Texas game this weekend. That's for sure. Okay, that
Yeah,
takes us
for sure.
into mailbag. We have a few mailbags this week. The first one from our buddy Sam Moser, who asks, is Vandy our best win so far? Michigan and OU wins are aging like yak milk. Yak milk, he said. So, yeah, Kevin, we'll go to you. What do you think? Is that our best win this season?
I don't want to answer that question. I hate that question. That was basically
Yeah.
Jake's little soapbox moment in our group text was that, that was our best win of the season. And to this point, I don't even want to look into who's got what record at this point and what's our best win. I just want to forget about that one and move on. But you've made me frustrated, Sam.
Andy, what do you think?
Um, I think so. I think it is. I think another question to like pile on top of it is, will Vandy be the best win of the season for Texas? Hopefully not, but it could be potentially.
Ooh,
Um,
that would be stressful.
that would be very stressful. That means Texas probably lost a couple times down the stretch.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's not the case. Yeah, actually, in my prep, I did a deep dive between last year's schedule and this year's schedule. I'm not going to get into it; it's way too long. But if you look at it, the schedule last year and this year, actually, there are some similarities with them. And nobody last year said our schedule was weak. So I think this next month will say a lot, but and I think we'll get some better victories too. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
Great. Yeah, no, great answers, fellas. He had a follow-up question too, and he asks, which win will age better? Texas's win over Vandy or A&M's win over LSU? Kev, I don't know if you're still refraining from answering, but Andy, we'll bounce to you first, and Kev, you can think on that.
Um,
I mean,
yeah, I don't really get that one. Yeah, definitely A&M's win over LSU.
yeah,
I
a
don't see
hundred
that.
percent, a hundred
Yeah,
percent. That's definitely a better win. Like they surged. They actually scored touchdowns in the second half. That's definitely a prettier win.
yeah.
Yeah, double-digit victory. I mean, that's nothing to scoff at for sure. Okay, we got one more from our buddy Matt Hack, who asks, will we ever wait at least until we're on the other side of the field before turning the ball over? So I think, Matt referencing some of the ill-timed batted balls or just miscues on the offensive side. So what do y'all think? Is it just, are we gonna, is it, do y'all, like, I guess another way to think about this question is, how much, I guess, blame or ownership would you attribute to maybe Quinn needing to kind of recognize when a defender is coming unchecked, or if it's just down to just bad luck and things will kind of regress to the mean? What do y'all think?
This this question to me is like the if you reach age 65, you're probably going to live to 90. So it's like if Texas reaches midfield, they're probably going to score. Uh,
I have never heard that before in my life, but that is amazing.
it's not. I don't know like what the exact number is after 65, but I think it's 90. Like the odds of living to 90 like go way up if you make it to 65. Um, but yeah, I just think it's bad luck. So I'll leave it there. Kev, what do you think?
I'm just gonna say, as the question was phrased, my response would be, I hope not, because that would mean we never turn the ball over on our side of the field, and I think we would all take that.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good
Okay.
way to look at it.
Okay. Good answers, fellas. All right, well, folks, that'll do it for us this week. Great Vandy recap. Awesome win. We'll take a W for sure. And fellas, thanks for getting into the state of the program and as well as looking ahead to what we have to look forward to the rest of the season. So, Longhorns fans, hope you all enjoy a relaxing weekend with no stressful, narrow victories. Maybe get out to a pumpkin patch during the weekend, get that in before the Halloween holiday. And thanks for listening. We'll see y'all on the next Football on the 40.
Hook 'em.